Good morning. I am opening the staff hearing officer meeting for March 23rd, 2022. I'm going to start off with preliminary matters, requests for continuances, withdrawals, postponements of or addition of ex-agenda items. Let's see, I don't have any. There's just one note about a project at 418 North Salsa Puedes that was suspended by the Planning Commission. Will be hearing, there will be a second meeting at Planning Commission to make a decision about that suspension. In terms of announcements and appeals, I'm going to go first, before we do Vista Del Mar. I just want to make an announcement that beginning April 1st, all of our boards and commission meetings will be happening in person. So if you're a member of the public or an applicant, you will need to be at the Gebhard Room for all of our boards and commissions, with exception to Planning Commission. Item number 1 for 229 Vista Del Mar. This is an announcement of the staff hearing officer decision on a coastal development permit for a project at 229 Vista Del Mar to allow the proposed development in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the city's coastal zone. The project consists of a proposal to construct a new 1,200 square foot, 2-story detached accessory dwelling unit in the side yard of the lot, pursuant to California Government Code 65852.2. The subject parcel is currently developed with a 1,920 square foot single-story residence with an attached 2-car garage, which is proposed to remain. The 27,443 square foot lot is located in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone, with the coastal land use plan designation of low density residential and a zone E3 SD3. Just to clarify matters, this is when there's a development proposed with that's specifically an accessory dwelling unit to an existing single family residence. The application is reviewed by the staff hearing officer without a public hearing in accordance with Government Code section 65852.2. And so I'm able to take public comment, written correspondence, which I acknowledge there's quite a few people who wrote in about this particular project, but there's no public hearing. So this is just an announcement, and my announcement will be the final decision by the city. And I just wanna say that I read the staff report, I went out on site, I read all of the letters from neighbors and people in the community who submitted public comment. I am able to make the findings for the coastal development permit, specifically that the accessory dwelling unit project is consistent with the policies of the California Coastal Act, as is described in the staff report, and that it will not, the project will not result in any type of adverse effects related to coastal resources, including the public views, public access to the coast, or coastal bluff erosion. The proposed development is located within an existing area that is able to accommodate it, and the parking and open space minimum requirements will be maintained for the primary residence. Secondly, the accessory dwelling unit is consistent with all the applicable policies of the city's local coastal plan and all implementing guidelines and provisions within our municipal code, as is described in the staff report as well. I'm going to go through my thinking on some of these things and address some of the points that came up. I heard a lot about from members of the public about noise. This is a project that, in terms of noise and how it's managed, this project meets all of the zoning requirements. So the way that I look at this, I have to look at the Coastal Policy Act and our coastal policies. I look at the ordinance and how it meets it, and looking at the different guidelines and trying to be able to make those findings. And I felt confident that I was able to do that. So that's why I can approve this coastal development permit. I believe that the accessory dwelling unit is compatible with the neighborhood development, and that It doesn't have any adverse impacts. A couple of things to that point. I went around the neighborhood looking at other examples of second story elements, and there are a handful in the circle around Vista Del Mar. I think the applicant has designed it in a way that tries to, that actually sets back the development a little bit further. Our accessory dwelling unit regulations allow that you can be up to 4 feet, and in an interior setback, it's set back even more. The deck on the second story is also proposed to be more than 15 feet away from the neighboring property, which is also something that's consistent with our good neighbor guidelines in single family areas. The entrance to the ADU is between the primary residence and the proposed ADU. And so I don't imagine there will be any noise or lighting issues, associated kind of nuisance and things that I look for. So I felt like the applicant did a savvy job of trying to design that to minimize any potential impacts there. But otherwise, in terms of the size of the ADU, it meets all of the regulations. So I can't, there's no, they're able to propose an accessory dwelling unit up to 1,200 square feet, which they've done. And therefore, those are some of my thinking behind the compatibility. This is providing rental housing in the city, which is something we desperately need. I disagree with the idea that providing more housing will create more crime, as several mentioned in the public comment. Trash will be addressed as it is with every single family residence. Parking, they meet the parking requirements by having the 2 covered parking spaces for the primary residence, and otherwise this project meets the exception for being within half a mile of a bus stop. So I'm able to make the necessary findings to do so, but I just wanted to go through some of those items that came up and at least address them and why I was able to find consistency. So that is my decision, and we can go ahead and move on to, let's see, there is, I just want to say that my decision is subject to the draft conditions of approval that are listed in the staff report. And now we can go ahead and move on to item C, which is comments from members of the public pertaining to items not on the agenda. And so if I could ask anyone who wishes to speak on items not on today's agenda, please do so by raising your hand, and I will call on you. And I don't see any hands raised for items not on the agenda. So I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. And then we can open it up to our first item, which is 648 Ricardo Avenue. Sorry, there we go. Second item, technically. All right. So I'd like to invite staff to join us, and if we can have the applicant, let's see, I'm going to promote the applicant. So give her just a moment.
Both Natalie and Elsa are here.
Okay, is she in? Ms. Phillips.
Yes, can you hear me?
There you go, there you are. Okay, so let me go ahead and read this item in the record, and then we can go ahead and get going. Okay, so this is 648 Ricardo Avenue. This is a 13,682 square foot site currently developed with a single family residence and attached 2-car garage. The proposed project involves substantial redevelopment of the residence with demolishing most of the structural walls and rebuilding in approximately the same footprint, with a height increase of the main residence and expansion of the garage within the front setback. The residence would remain 1 story. The garage would be slightly expanded to be a 2-car garage consistent with the city's contemporary parking design standards. The discretionary application under the jurisdiction of the staff hearing officer required for this project is a front setback modification to allow substantial redevelopment within the front setback. All right, so I think we have Ms. Swanson here to do our staff presentation, and then we can pass it off to you, Ms. Phillips, to follow up.
Yeah, if we can just open up the plans, and I believe it's page 3 is the existing site plan. Oh, let's stay here. Can we go back to, sorry, page 2? Just so we can compare. So as we can see, we do have an existing house. It is partially located within the required front setback as is. And then if we go to the next page, there's an addition at the rear of the house, and we can see largely.
Pardon my interruption. Mr. Russell, do you mind zooming in just a little bit more, please? That's great. Thank you.
Okay, so we can see they're doing an addition at the back of the house and largely the same footprint at the front of the house. There's a really small decrease at the entrance foyer of about 5 square feet. And then an additional 3 square feet at the garage. You can see where the dark gray becomes a white with the hatch. That small little sliver there is just added square footage in the garage to increase the size of the garage to meet contemporary standards. So it is largely the same footprint that is already in the front setback. Normally, we do allow for this kind of development to occur without a modification with several caveats. 1, the height cannot increase. 2, the floor area cannot be increased. And 3, the footprint has to stay the same. And in this case, all 3 of those are not met because there is that slight deviation at the entrance foyer. There is an additional height of approximately 3 foot 9 inches in the front setback to allow for clear story windows. And there's also a change in the roof pitch that makes it ineligible for what's called a minor zoning exception instead of a modification. And again, the floor area is also being increased in the front setback with that small little sliver of approximately 3 square feet at the garage. And so staff is supportive of this because when we look at the overall site, the site is largely divided in half, with the front half of the lot being flat and already built out, and the second half of the lot having steep slopes. And then in the center here, we have an SCE utility easement. So you see this is I believe it's a 10-foot easement that runs through the center of the lot. And there is some work proposed there, just some landscape walls, but we are requiring that SCE give us confirmation that they are okay with those landscape walls, and just so that they are aware that this work is occurring in the setback in case SCE needs to, sorry, not in the setback, in the easement, just so that SCE is aware that this work is happening in case they ever need to get in there and do any work within their easement. So this project was reviewed by the Single Family Design Board 3 times: April 26, 2021, August 16th, 2021, and February 14th, 2022. So there were a series of slight revisions to the roof line and the street facing elevation, and the SFDB was supportive of the project at the last 2 hearings. The 3rd hearing was really only happening because there was the slight increase in the garage, and that hadn't occurred at the 2nd hearing. So at the 3rd hearing, they were largely saying we're still supportive of it and we're supportive of the garage as well. And in the exhibits that I attached to the staff report with the SFDB minutes and the applicant letter, I also included 4 neighbor letters of support. And I have received no contact from the public. We did get one public comment letter in opposition to the project. But other than that, that was received by the staff hearing officer secretary. I have received no contact about this project. It is exempt from CEQA under 15301 and 15305. Oh, I'm sorry, 15302, replacement and reconstruction, and 15305, minor alterations and land use limitations. So that's the end of my notes, and Natalie is here, and I'm here for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Swanson. Please go ahead, Ms. Phillips.
Okay. I'd like to thank the planning staff for providing the staff report, which I think is really thorough, providing a background for the project, also explaining why we believe the modification is required and why it should be approved. I assume the staff hearing officer has had the opportunity to review that. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So I don't want to go too far into giving you information that you already know, but for anyone that happens to be watching and anyone that might have concern about the project, I think the best means of explaining what we're trying to do is a very small addition to an existing one-story house. I know that we're at a modification hearing, so how can I say that it's nothing big, but really it is quite minimal. Right here on the image that you're looking at, in the front yard setback, we are basically maintaining the existing square footage that's in the front yard. As staff has mentioned prior, we are adding to the garage, which is the equivalent of 1 foot in width, only because it's required by city. We are required to have a 20 by 20 clear space in the garage. So we actually didn't even want to do this. We're being required to do so. Otherwise, all of the square footage that's in the front yard setback is existing. And if anybody had any concerns about us having any other additions, again, the reminder is the additions are in the rear of the house. And we can only add so much because we have that limitation with the utility easement that we can't physically build over. Now, those retaining walls in the easement, we will get the clarification we need to make sure that happens. Those are just landscape walls, but no structure can be built over top of that easement. We are very limited on the pad in which we can work. I guess, I don't have a lot more to say. We're adding the volume change is the fact that we're going from an 8-foot plate to a 9-foot plate. Again, very minimal. We want this to be a 1-story house. We could have come here with a 2-story project, but we're not. We're at a minimal 47% for our FAR, which is very small. We're just looking to maintain the existing house in the existing location with some minimal additions that allow this house to be continually used the way it is right now. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have or clarifications for whatever reason.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. And I'm going to go ahead and open it up for public comment, and then we'll come back for questions. So if you wish to speak on this particular item, please do so by clicking on the raise hand icon on the bottom left portion of your screen. You'll receive an unmute request if your hand is raised, and that'll indicate that you just need to click unmute. I do not see anyone raising their hands at the moment. Ms. Gu, I'll just ask, can you please confirm that about public comment that we received for this item?
We did receive one public comment from a Giovanni Patota, so that one we did post and distribute. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge that I read that, and I also read the what the applicant provided, including neighbor letters of support. So we can go ahead and close public comment. I don't see anybody else with hands raised. So if we could go back to the plans. I mean, this is just such a minimal change. I watched the SFDB meetings. I read the minutes. I went through all of your materials, Ms. Phillips, reading the staff report. I concur with staff's conclusions. Ms. Swanson wrote really good findings and conditions in terms of the rationale for supporting this front setback modification. I can go ahead and make the findings that It's consistent with the intent and purpose of the single family zone, and specifically to allow the accessory uses such as a garage. I know that it seems like your hands were tied a little bit by transportation requirements, so that you had to expand that garage. Like you mentioned, you could have come in with a 2-story proposal that met other zoning requirements, but you're keeping it to 1 story. And a lot of what you're trying to achieve by expanding the height increase is really kind of design oriented, or maybe just making it a nicer interior with a 1 foot of additional space. I'm pleased to see that the increased height and roof line that the single family design board reviewed, that they were able to support based on consistency with the neighborhood, and provided those favorable comments in terms of the bulk, size, bulk, and scale. So yeah, I can make the findings as written in the staff report. And my decision would be subject to that one condition that and the applicant would be submitting a letter of acknowledgement or approval from the Southern California Edison for any work within that utility easement prior to any type of zoning sign off for the building permit. But yeah, I really appreciate Ms. Phillips. You always do a really thorough job of your justifications and your applicant letter and kind of your reasons why. So yeah, it seemed to me more or less a very straightforward project. And like I said, trying to achieve the minimum or the standards for a garage, and also a few design features that would again keep a single story residence, single story, recognizing the limitations of this site and the challenges it poses. So that's my decision. My decision can be appealed within 10 calendar days of this hearing, or any member of the Planning Commission could suspend my decision within that same 10 calendar day time period. And yeah, anyone who's interested could review the slide on screen. But thank you so much, Ms. Phillips, and I wish you well going back to SFDB.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Okay, and thank you, Ms. Swanson. Okay, so next project. We have item B, 2412 Selrose Lane. So this is a 7,443 square foot site. It's currently developed with a 1,125 square foot single family residence and a 440 square foot detached 2-car garage. The project consists of a proposal to demolish the existing 440 square foot attached garage and construct a 440 square foot replacement garage in the same location with an increase in height from 10 feet to 12 feet 6 inches, and an attached 474 square foot attached accessory dwelling unit to the rear of the garage, pursuant to California Government Code 65852.2. So the discretionary applications under the jurisdiction of the staff hearing officer today, or for this project, are: one is an interior setback modification to allow the existing garage, which is non-conforming to the interior setback, to be rebuilt in the same footprint with an increase in height from 10 feet to 12 feet 6 inches. And then a coastal development permit to allow the proposed development in the appealable jurisdiction of the city's coastal zone. I just want to clarify, if we could go back to that slide. So the way that we're going to review these, I'm first going to, I'll have to make a decision on the modification, and then the follow-up would be an announcement of the coastal development permit. And part of that is really due to the fact that a modification will require, there needs to be a public hearing on the decision. So that will happen first, and then the announcement of the coastal development permit decision is based on our state laws and the state government code. Next slide. And that's a little bit of what that says here. So again, I can accept public comment, written correspondence to the coastal development permit, but there's no public hearing associated with that. And There we go. We can go ahead, and I'd like to ask staff to join us. We have Ms. Broadison here to give the staff presentation, and then we will pass it off to the applicant, Mr. Thompson, and who I'll promote. So give me just one moment to promote Mr. Thompson. He's not already, is he promoted?
Miss Kokenda, it would be Douglas Beard is here.
Douglas Beard would be representing Dennis Thompson.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Forgive me.
No problem.
Okay, glad you're here. And Ms. Broadison, whenever you're ready.
Sure. Good morning, Kelly Broadison with Community Development. If you could go to slide 2, that would be great. Or page 2 of the plans. And this is a site plan showing the existing site. So as you said, the project is at 2412 Selrose, and the 7,443 square foot lot is in the appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone and also in the single family residential zone. It's developed with an 1,100 square foot single family residence and a non-conforming 44 square foot garage. It's non-conforming to this interior setback to the west. The proposal is to demolish the garage and rebuild the same garage in the same location, the same footprint, and construct a new 474 square foot ADU accessory dwelling unit behind the garage in the rear yard. The required applications are an interior setback to rebuild the garage with an increase in height from 10 feet to 12'6", and a CDP is required for the accessory dwelling unit in the coastal zone. Let's see. So the location of the project is on the northern side of the mesa, and it's south of the Cliff Drive. And as stated, the existing 440 square foot garage encroaches 1 foot into the required setback of 6 feet, as you can see in this slide. If you're able to zoom in on the garage there, they'll show a little bit of a dimension on this survey. And then, so normally just to rebuild the garage in the same footprint would not require any discretionary review, but because there is a request to increase the height by 2 feet and 6 inches, it requires an interior setback mod. So let's see. Staff believes that this is a supportable mod because the proposed increase in height within the interior setback will be in line with the existing non-conforming garage, the existing footprint. The increase in height is relatively modest and is only to accommodate a change in roof line. No windows will be proposed or openings within the setback, minimizing any impacts to the adjacent neighbor. An additional benefit is that the new ADU would be 5 feet, which provides an additional foot of setback. Normally it would only need to be 4 feet, but to keep the ADU and the new garage within the same construction plane, they're actually proposing an additional foot of setback for the ADU. So separately, the accessory dwelling unit also requires a coastal development permit, and the ADU complies with the requirements of the Government Code 65852.2, and it also complies with all zoning requirements as described in the staff report. Staff analyzed the project and found that the project is consistent with the California Coastal Act and the local coastal plan as detailed in the staff report. Staff does recommend that the staff hearing officer approves the modification and the coastal development permit as recommended in the staff report, subject to the conditions of approval. And also we did receive one public comment letter from an adjacent neighbor to the rear on Mesa School Lane. That concludes staff's presentation, and let me know if you have any questions. And Douglas Beard is here to represent the applicant.
Thank you, Ms. Broadison. I appreciate it. And Mr. Beard, whenever, please go ahead and with your presentation, any other details you wish to add on.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Kelly. And I'd just like to say that, yes, this modification is just for the height, raising the height of the existing garage 2.5 feet. The existing garage is non-conforming based upon its width, but we are replacing it to stay non-conforming in its current state, where so there was no larger footprint or anything of that nature. It is just a height modification, and the reason is that it matches the existing slope of the existing portion of the house currently. And it would also go along and match what we're proposing for the ADU roof line as well. So it's a sloping roof on both the rebuild and the addition, and it matches the slope of the existing residence. If you would like to look at that, that's on the next page, page 4. But
Yeah.
really, that's all I have to present, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Beard. All right. Yeah, so thank you. I'm glad. I just wanted to make sure we could see the elevations.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you for your presentation. So I'm going to open it up for public comment on the interior setback modification. Again, this is the only thing that I can accept comments on for a public hearing is the interior setback modification. If you wish to make a comment, please raise your hand by clicking on the raise hand icon, and then I will invite you to unmute yourself when you're called upon. And let me see if we have anybody. I don't see any hands raised. Ms. Gu, can you just confirm what written correspondence we received?
For this particular item on the interior setback modification, we have not received any public comment. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right, I don't see any hands raised.
I just wanted to clarify, we did receive one letter from an adjacent neighbor to the rear.
Yes.
Mr. Dubin. Okay, just wanted to verify.
Thank you. I appreciate you. I know you mentioned, I wanted to call that out and say that, and I did read that. So thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment on the interior setback modification. So in some ways that the last modification that was requested in this one are very similar in some ways, that there was a request to do a height increase in the setback on a non-conforming setback, and it's just to achieve better design, and also yeah, just to additionally be able to I don't anticipate there's going to be an impact to the neighbor. There are no windows. I can easily make the findings, as Ms. Brodesson wrote in her staff report, that I find the interior setback modification is consistent with the intent and purpose of the single family zone, and specifically to allow single family and accessory uses such as the garage. That overall footprint is identical to the existing footprint of the garage within the interior setback, and that this small increase will not create any type of excessive impact to the adjacent neighbor. And the fact that all other zoning standards have been met, the encroachment is in line with the existing non-conforming setback. And yeah, it's very straightforward. And I think overall, this is a handsome project. In terms of the ADU and the height and setback there, I mean, the rules are slightly different for accessory dwelling units, but again, I think the applicant was conscious of keeping the development plane in line with the existing garage. And so I very much appreciate that. So again, the proposed encroachment can be found to be necessary to secure an appropriate improvement on the lot. So that's my decision for the interior setback modification. I'm going to go ahead and make an announcement for the coastal development permit. First, let me actually, before I do that, I just want to acknowledge that for the interior setback modification, that can be appealed. And if we want to share, I'll get to that, but let me first, we'll bring that up on screen. But in terms of the coastal development permit, this is really just an announcement of my decision that similarly, I can make the findings as outlined in Ms. Brodesson's staff report that the accessory dwelling unit project is consistent with the California Coastal Act, and that it will not result, that the project development will not result in any adverse effects related to coastal resources, public views, public access to the coast, or any coastal bluff erosion. That it's the proposed development is within an existing area that's able to accommodate it. The parking and open space minimum requirements are maintained for the primary residence, and that this accessory dwelling unit is consistent with all other applicable policies of the city's local coastal plan, implementing guidelines, and then our municipal code. Specifically, the project, the small increase in height and the overall project for the accessory dwelling unit will not cause any, will not be any kind of impact to any public views or public access. And it's not in any type of sensitive area, so that it's easy to make these findings. So that is my decision for the coastal development permit. If I could have Mr. Russell pull up the appeal for the interior setback modification. This is an appealable decision within 10 calendar days of my decision. Similarly, the Planning Commission could suspend my decision if they so wish to be reviewed at a later date within that same 10 calendar day time period. All right, I think that just want to clarify that my decision, it does come with the conditions that are drafted in Ms. Broadduson's staff report dated March 16th. All of those will apply to my decision. And thank you so much, Mr. Beard and Ms. Broadduson. And I think that concludes our meeting for March 23rd. All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thanks again, everyone.